All right, today on the show, we have Kurt Uhlir from Showcase IDX. Let me tell you, actually, Kurt does a lot more than just Showcase IDX. So let me tell you about Kurt. Now, Kurt Uhlir is a globally recognized marketer, operator, and speaker. He's a dynamic and charismatic speaker talking about marketing and innovation. His speaking experience includes speeches across the United States and Europe, in addition to presenting at prominent industry events such as PPAI, GDC, the White House, and private company team workshops. He advises leaders from startup founders to private equity-backed CEOs to the President of the United States. Kurt is a popular and entertaining commenter and has appeared on national television shows and periodicals, including Wired, TechCrunch, Thrive Global, USA Today, WGN for all your local Chicago people, NBC, ABC. He's everywhere. Reach out to him, by the way, for a guest on marketing, real estate, or growing American-based business. He's built and run businesses from startups to over 500 million in annual revenue. He's assembled teams across 6 continents. He's been part of the small team leading an IPO, which went for $880 million, and he's participated in dozens of acquisitions. I think we've gone enough. I could keep going and talk about Kurt's accomplishments. He also, by the way, runs Showcase IDX, which is a great IDX service for our audience. And boy, he talks to associations. He does it all. Really, to learn more about Kurt, he holds patents, by the way. He's just really done some incredible things. Go to his website, kurtuhlir.com. That's KURTUHLIR.com. We'll have a link to that in our show notes. Kurt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I couldn't ask for a better intro than that. I mean,
I had to cut it short because I could have just kept going, and I go, oh my God, I'm going to give 20 minutes of your bio, which it's just so impressive. We're really excited to have you on the show. And you know what I love about you, Kurt, before I even got to meet you, here's what I love. I love the fact that you're so organized and ready. Very rarely, just to pull back the curtain on our show, we get a lot of requests, of course, from people who want to be on the show. What I loved about Kurt is a lot of times when we're coordinating with our guests saying, let's come up with some talking points, Kurt sent us a list of talking points. Nobody ever, I've been doing this 5 or 6 years. You would think that would happen more often than it does, and it doesn't. We always have to extract that. With Kurt, I got a whole list of great topics. So we're going to be speaking with Kurt about a lot of things real estate because he has a tremendous amount of industry experience and knowledge. But Kurt, I'd like to start all the way back at the beginning because you have done so many different things. But how did you get involved in real estate?
I've been in marketing and higher growth technology companies for 15, 18 years or so. And about 5 years ago, a man named Alan Pinstein gave me a call, and he's a fraternity brother, hadn't met him though. And he's like, I heard through the grapevine that you talked to your wife and letting you take 18 months after exiting one of the companies you started. That sounds like a really difficult discussion. I just sold Tour Buzz. Can we get coffee? And you talk me through what that looked like, because I might want to have that conversation. And Tour Buzz was in the real estate space, but he'd had this other company, Showcase IDX, that had been going since like 2003. And he told me about it. And I mean, cool, awesome technology compared to anything else. And so 5 days later, I met the CEO and we hit it off. And I was like, hey, let's go do this.
Amazing. Well, tell us about Showcase IDX a little bit.
Yeah, so it's the leading home search that agents use to build their own sites. And so, I mean, a lot of agents have misconceptions about IDX. Technically, it's just the feed that comes from your local association, but it's really, hey, it's the home search. It's all the tools that your home buyers and sellers use on your website. That should be the foundation. And so, I mean, everybody uses us, from Mark Spain, the #1 listing agent in the country, to Patrick Higgins. We can talk about him in Nashville, Tennessee, to a whole bunch of small part-time agents. And so if you want to get organic growth, it's kind of the only game in town.
Yeah. And so for anyone out there who isn't familiar with what an IDX data feed is, so all of us are members of likely our local association. It's how we get access to the MLS software. Of course, every local association, uses their own software. There's different providers. So these association, for example, here in Chicago, we use one called MRED. Downstate Illinois, they use totally different systems. So when agents are looking to build a website for themselves, they would love to be able to pull in the data from the MLS, just like Zillow, Redfin, any of the big national companies that we think of when we think about home searches online. And so agents want that same functionality. So they, anyone can build anyone a real estate website, but to then incorporate a live search feature to pull in all those MLS listings so that when people visit your website, they can actually search for homes is what Showcase IDX does. And so they'll integrate with websites. You probably, I'm sure, build websites as well for agents. So they sort of do it all to make sure that you don't just have this online business card. Essentially, if your website's just, hey, look at me, I'm a realtor, that's fine, but to actually add some functionality to, so people who visit can actually search for homes, that's what Showcase IDX does. And so really, really cool service. I would imagine anyone who's built a real estate website understands the importance of having an IDX feed. What I've always said too, and I'm curious, Kurt, just to get your opinion on this, a lot of times I think people go into an IDX relationship, so they build a website, they incorporate IDX into it. And then I think the expectation sometimes isn't always accurate for the agent who's just built this website. And they might think, great, I have this website, I now have this search feature. Where's all this traffic, right? And then of course, maybe they're not getting the leads. And I've always said, I don't even know if that's the main point of having an IDX site, because whether or not someone uses it, that's a whole different conversation, because now we're talking about how do you drive traffic to that website, which is a totally different conversation, and a much more challenging objective. But I've always thought, even if no one really uses it, which they should, but even if they don't, it still makes you look extremely professional. I think it's got to be there regardless of whether it becomes, your primary lead source or just something that I just think regardless, it looks really, really professional.
No, I agree. I think there's three reasons that somebody needs to have a site with a home search on it. The first is you're passing a vetting test. If you don't realize it before your client picks you, the average, and NAR says it's usually people work with the first agent they find. All the data I've seen actually says people talk to more than 3 agents before they choose their agent. So you're getting vetted against at least 2 others. And if you don't have a site, this person is going to call them from Zillow. So that's a second agent in the mix already. So you pass the vetting test. To your point, it makes you look good. The second part to me is it's retention. And so, hey, there's one thing to get leads, but if I don't have a home search, it's not just having a search on my site. If I don't have a home search that my home buyers will actually use, then they're going to go to Zillow. And the only thing I can guarantee in the industry is that if your clients go to Zillow, a competitive agent will be calling them, knowing what they're searching for and all their contact info, plus a whole bunch of other people. But then the third part is there is a way to do lead gen with it, which a lot of people, you're right, they think, hey, I spent $60, $100 a month to add this plug into my site. Why don't I have traffic? They don't follow the model that actually uses our technology to actually make that happen.
Yeah, and again, those are really important things to think about, because again, you're right. The vast majority of home consumers are going to go to Zillow. So anything that you can do to capture a tiny piece of that traffic as an agent is huge, because of course we know the way Zillow makes money is they sell leads. That's their deal, and so to be able to pull that traffic and keep that in-house. But the challenge over the years has been how to do it in an elegant way and to have technology that rivals what, of course, Zillow and Redfin and those companies have kind of mastered, is this user experience. And what I like about Showcase IDX is you guys have gone pretty deep there and been able to create really functional website, integration, so that when people visit, they're not having a less than experience than if they go to Zillow or Redfin. They're basically having the same exact experience, if not even better. So I'm a big fan of what you guys do. But I want to talk a little bit more about marketing, because to have you on the show is a real treat for us because of your breadth and depth of knowledge. But let's talk about things that agents aren't doing, or that you feel are huge opportunities today, from a marketing perspective. Like what are some of the things that are on your mind?
There's kind of 2 things. So one is, you hear continually from the agents that are high performers, those top 1%ers, the 0.1 percenters, that especially early on, and even often when they've hit real transaction volume, their agents don't niche down. Hey, I'm in Roswell, Georgia. I own a lot of property in Blairsville, Georgia. Almost every agent I see online, whether they have a website or not, they're like, I help people buy homes in Roswell, as opposed to who helped my wife and I buy our home. It was a name, Keller Williams agent named Bobby Lyerly. Bobby and two other agents trade leads back and forth because he helps married couples in their mid 20s to early 40s with young kids, pretty much to go to two large churches in the area. That's all those agents do. Singles, well, sorry, I don't help you with that because I don't know that demographic very well, he says. But he's awesome for it. I can't tell you how many transactions they do, but I mean, that's niche. That's what niching down looks like. Most agents just don't do it because they're scared when they have low volume about, well, I don't want to exclude somebody, and they don't realize, yeah, when you exclude people, you actually become a lot more attractive to the others. And the other big thing that I think agents just aren't doing is they don't realize we're in an influence economy. And so I've mentioned before, agents are getting vetted. Hey, I'm choosing you whether you niche down or not. I'm choosing to work with you for certain reasons. And so, hey, you could be really big on TikTok and somebody talked you into that, or Pinterest, or whatever tool you're working on today. But all of those things we know historically change their algorithms. And so what happens if you don't have a digital hub, a website that to be able to funnel people back to, like you're basically peddling your interest on something that could go away literally tomorrow when the next algorithm changes. And so people don't realize it's an influence economy, and you're in it not just for today, but for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially the sort of influence economy conversation, because I've always thought, it's easy for, well, I shouldn't say easy. A lot of agents, I'll back up a step. So a lot of agents, I believe, think, they're used to going on Facebook, Instagram, maybe LinkedIn, whatever you were saying, other platforms, TikTok, Pinterest, et cetera. And they're used to scrolling and being a consumer themselves of those services. So a lot of times they think, okay, well, I'll start promoting myself more on Facebook or wherever. And that's great and good. And you should have a strategy there. But if you actually look at the metrics, even if you have your own business page on Facebook and you have, followers, people that subscribe to it, you're probably only capturing, I haven't looked at data recently, but I think it's maybe every time you post, maybe 3 to 5% of that audience will actually see that post, right? So that's sort of what
way
you're
less than
referencing
that
is,
even now.
even less. Yeah.
But that's an awesome thing because if you know what you're doing, you can reuse content. So if only 3%, even if it was 3%, I could theoretically post, like, it usually an overlap. I could post it 10 times and very few people will see the same post over and over. So if you know what you're doing, you can reuse a lot of your content.
That's a really, really good point. And so, for anyone listening, to think about that, and I suspect Facebook understands duplicate posting. I would guess. I don't know for sure, but my guess is it wouldn't make sense for Facebook to show somebody, even if it's different posts but the same content. I guess my guess is Facebook also makes sure they're not sending the same person a duplicate post. I don't know for sure. I'm going to ask my friends at Facebook about that, because what you're talking about is really important. This idea of repurposing content. So if you have this great post, realize that even if you have a great response to it, maybe 3% of your audience saw it. So if you reuse it, you as the agent might sort of aesthetically, if you look at your feed, go, I don't like the idea of posting something over and over again. But the reality of it is no one else is seeing that other than you. So the idea of repurposing it is really important. And of course, you don't maybe post it right after, the same thing 10 times in a row, but you have it on a rotation, I'm guessing is what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, Facebook, you can't really schedule for anymore on personal profiles, but I mean, on everything else, it's like, I actually use a tool called Missing Letter for my personal things that I can put into a drip feed, kind of like, hey, this is a big article. Like I wrote this massive article that's been covered by all sorts of places on servant leadership. And so I put that into Missing Letter for a 400-day basically drip. So it'll go out on day 1, day 32, day 90, and it's basically good to go for like the non-personal profile stuff at that point. So I don't have to worry about touching LinkedIn again. It just works.
Yeah, that's called Missing Letter. I'm not familiar, so I'll have to check. I love it.
And of course, very Web 2.0. So they're missing a couple vowels at the end. But
of course, that's a really funny comment. This idea of removing a vowel and making a company out of it. It seems to be everyone's idea for the tech space. So I love that. That is really, really a funny observation. I'm now thinking about all the things I subscribe to, different services where there's a letter there's a vowel missing in the company name. Right. That's really funny. I want to ask you about, just real estate agent business. So, realtors, our listeners are either individual practitioners, it's them, they do everything themselves. They wear a lot of different hats. Then, of course, there's a lot of people who listen, of course, that are on teams or thinking of building a team or maybe joining a team. But I want to talk about what real estate agents maybe are underutilizing. So I know we're thinking a lot about, okay, the market has changed, rates are up, inventory is still pretty low, most markets. Realtors now, who I guess are at the very top, are breathing a little sigh of relief because they now have a little bit more free time than they did before. But people who are not at the top of the mountain are freaking out. Oh my gosh, it's really slow. This is bad. So I'm just curious on what you would coach or encourage somebody to do, right now to help kind of, keep their business rolling.
I think they're both keep their business rolling, and then where do you come out on the other side? I mean, I think we're all seeing this market slowdown. I mean, God knows what Q3 is actually going to look like, but I completely believe that like we're going to see like what we saw like in 2007. The people that hit it hard in the next 6 to 12 months, that they're going to add zeros to their net worth when we're looking out 2 years and 5 years from now. And so this is the time to do. I think it's two things. One is, I mean, the main thing is, agents aren't using their own wisdom. They're so focused on who's going to close a transaction today. If they are posting online, that's all of their content usually. Hey, here's a new listing. Here's a closing that I did. That's slowing down. Well, even when it's still a 5-year turnover for in your market, the chance that's of 100 people that follow you, how many are active buyers? Like a very small percentage are actually active buyers. And so they don't think about what content is useful to people when they're not active, which will help me with referrals, but also make sure that they come back to me when they're ready for the next transaction. So I kind of see the same data across all the agents that I'm able to look into tens of thousands of agent CRMs, but Agent Hub 360, a great partner that I know that helps agents kind of with the whole tech stack and everything. When we look in at like their average customers and go, let's look at like the last 6 to 10 closed transactions. The average window, how long somebody has been in the CRM, is like 17 to 27 months. So everybody wants the new lead from Zillow or from a pay-per-click ad, but the reality is most of the people that are closing transactions, they've known the people they're working with for 17 to 27 months.
Yeah, so I'm at a cocktail party, or I'm out, meeting people socially, and I meet somebody, and I think, okay, hey, by the way, I'm a realtor, and if you ever need any help, I'd love the opportunity to work with you. And the person goes, okay, great, and then maybe you get their contact information, and so now you have somebody to add to your CRM, but also to think, okay, this person, I need to have a strategy to touch this person at some frequency, because they're for the next, we'll say 2 years, right? 17 to 24 months is the average. So yes, they're unlikely to buy tomorrow, or sell tomorrow, but maybe in the next 2 years. So realizing whenever you add people into your database that you have to have then a pretty serious follow-up or education sort of strategy so that you're touching them in ways. So you just said something that was really
tag them
important.
right away. Like, you qualify them. Are they an active buyer? And if not, you put them in a different category, and you should treat them different. Because if you hound me after we met at that dinner party or that barbecue, and I'm not even ready yet, chances are if it's a marriage or a partnership, there's usually one person who even gets ready 2 to 3 years. They're thinking about it before they even bring it up to their spouse. Well, if you hound either of those people like they're an active buyer, you're almost gone with them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I always call it the what a lot of agents have done, and I don't mean to diminish this or to be pejorative here in my comment, but a lot of times people meet someone, they get their information, they immediately throw them on their newsletter, and that's fine, but that's, again, as Kurt's saying, that person might not be ready to buy today. They probably don't care about your newsletter today. That's not to say you shouldn't send it, but you should realize that the communication to that person who's like maybe 2 years out, or maybe you don't even know how long out, really needs to be different than the person who's like actively looking. And so you're talking about segmenting your database and your sphere of influence. How do you continue to touch the people that are maybe 2 years plus out by giving them content that, yeah, they're not buying or selling today, but I still want them to know who I am and what I do? What are your suggestions for those people?
Yeah, so there's a really easy one if you have your own website with a home search. It doesn't have to be Showcase. There's a sweet spot of you help somebody close a transaction from 6 months to 24 months ago, because any longer than that, one of those two people in the house might be starting to think about their next place already. But that sweet spot, you call them up with this, basically, do you want to know what's going on in your market, especially now? Hey, I can just sign you up for open house alerts so that you can see who's upgrading their bathrooms and kitchens when it comes up. If anything makes sense, let me know. If you do it non-salesy, you can ask, hey, can I sign you up as well for new listing alerts in your neighborhood? Or if it's a high rise, like in Chicago, like, in your condo building, or Miami or something. Because what happens then is your referrals will go up by at least 3x. I see a 3 to 10x increase, because you didn't try to sell them anything. You're triggering the curiosity factor. This works from big national brokerages down to an individual agent. And so when you get the listing alert for the open house, it keeps top of mind. Kurt's my agent. I can call him if I ever need anything. But also when the place comes up for sale and one of my buddies might be wanting to move the neighborhood, I just forward him the email, which brings them back to your website, not the MLS, not Zillow. And so that's how the referrals come.
I love that. So I'm a perfect example of, as you were talking, I was getting excited and maybe even a little embarrassed that I hadn't thought of this, because so I have bought in a condo in a new development, and everyone's moved in at this point. I think there's about 30 some units. Anyway, I am fascinated by at some point, I won't live there. I'll probably live there another handful of years, and then I'll move somewhere else. And I am curious always about, I wonder if the value of my condo has gone up or down.
Right.
And one of the ways to determine that, of course, is you could go to Zillow and look at the Zestimate, and that might be accurate, it might not. Or you could set up alerts to see open houses. Like, I'm super interested in the first person in our building that will sell their property, because that will affect the rest of us. So this idea of setting up alerts for the neighborhood, like you said, curiosity, what's going on in my neighborhood?
You're right, it's curiosity, because agents tend to default to a CMA sign up they'll sign somebody up for, but that triggers the logical side of the brain. My home is worth $400,000. What I said triggers the emotional, and almost everybody makes decisions emotion-wise about, do I want to move? Do I want to sell? Hey, it may not change the value of my home, but if they're all upgrading their bathrooms, I want to upgrade my bathroom.
Right.
And that's what keeps people in a relationship with you. And so that's a really easy way to do that. But you mentioned like the newsletter before. The other thing for how do you get the relationship going for people that aren't active is you think about what's useful to them when they're not actively buying and selling. So I am of interest to your newsletter if your newsletter is actually done properly. 80 to 90% content for people that are not active buyers and sellers, and 10% maybe for content. I don't really care how many transactions you've closed. It's enough for a vetting thing. What I care about is, Alive After 5, the street festival that happens monthly in Roswell.
Yeah.
That's what I care about. What I care about is, hey, there's a new neighborhood going up over there that's changing the traffic dynamics when I take my kid to school or go to church. That's stuff that's useful to me that will go, God, I remember you then, and I may even tell people about you. And even though I may not be buying or selling for 5 years.
I love that. We just you're so 100% right. So in our building, we have a private Facebook group for the owners. And most of the time what we post on there is, hey, did you guys know this new restaurant? We just had a Jewish deli open up in our area. We don't have a Jewish deli. And so this is big, exciting news for us. So there's this new deli that's coming, and they'll have, pastrami and corned beef and matzo ball soup and all the fun Jewish deli food. And people are so excited. But the only reason we know about that is somebody told us. I didn't know. And so this is you're so right. So if you think, oh my God, well, I work in every neighborhood in my local area, and I have I live in Chicago or wherever where there's lots of neighborhoods. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to provide content like that to each segmented audience. But Kurt, you said something really important, is like, if you niche down, and like I live in a neighborhood called Wicker Park, and you become, not that you only have to work in Wicker Park, but if you become the Wicker Park guy or woman, and you now are submitting content, everybody in Wicker Park wants that content. We all want to know, like you said, when are the festivals, the street fairs, what's going on, maybe politically or
segmented down that much. I used to live at Damon and Division. I had a condo on Winchester.
Oh my gosh,
100 block. So, but even Chicago has all those little pocket neighborhoods. I would drive 2 and 3 miles, which is a long way in Chicago, when I found out about a new cool little dog park that opened up somewhere else. My English bulldog too. So even though you can, if you have the capacity to niche down and just share that local content, the more you can do that, the better. But it still also is very interesting for like but you're thinking about, I'm writing this about what's going on in Wicker Park, but also like, hey, is it worth, like, part of the thing, is it worth the 30-minute drive to get here? Like, if you add that little bit, it's now interesting to somebody in Evanston.
I love, you are
And,
so absolutely right.
right.
I love that.
So that's where you think about like, how do I just, when I'm writing this, and this is all marketing, all business. Most people, I think, in business, and what holds back from being just good marketing to exceptional, is they write things that are interest to them, or they think it's just this, and I literally take my glasses on and off sometimes and go, all right, I'm Kurt. All right, I know nothing that's in Kurt's head right now. All right, and I'll reread my thing to go, all right, what do I know just from what is going on in my newsletter? And then go, oh, well, somebody that wasn't just in Wicker Park, would I add anything that would make this of interest? The answer might be no, may not be possible, but I might be able to make that possible. Here in Roswell, they built this river walk, literally like a boardwalk along the Chattahoochee River. People drive an hour to come and park at it and go through. And still, I mentioned things literally like the next street over, or the next neighborhood over in Marietta, and people go, what? They have no idea that this thing has existed for like 5 years, literally just next door, when people are driving from south side of Atlanta to come walk along the Chattahoochee River.
And you're providing incredible value, because most people, they go to work, they have their weekend time, and they want to know about what's going on. What can I do this weekend? What can I go and enjoy with my family, by myself? What's going on in the community? And let's face it, it's hard to know all of that. It's really a challenge for the for the average parent or even individual, single person, to really know that. And that's where realtors can create tremendous value. You can be the person that's like, I subscribe to my stuff, and I'm going to let you know about everything that's going on in this area, fun, real estate wise, socially, dining, all of that is such great value as you wait out those 24 months or longer before the person actually needs you.
Yeah, well, I mean, this thing, I mean, just as we write content thinking that, like, assuming like people just know what we have, we think what we know, especially as agents, is not of interest to people because I know it. And if I live in Wicker Park and you're an agent, well, when we talk back and forth, we know about all the same stuff, not realizing that, hey, my average, a resident doesn't know what we might go back and forth on. And so we just got like, my job here is to serve people. And if I serve them well, then they will come back to me and they will see value in me. So that's where I was like, yes, the two things. And it's like that second piece was just, agents have all this wisdom and knowledge that they just need to convey, and they need to split it like 80 to 90% for not active buyers. And sometimes it's stuff you can automate. You can write that article about street festivals in Wicker Park and why you should or shouldn't go to this, to this restaurant. Well, that's automated kind of content because you can mass market it. You may also add notes and add a follow-up in. So like, hey, when we bought this house, we had a storage area that was stubbed out for a new bathroom. Now we approached our agent before this for there, and he gave us wonderful insight about whether it could be valuable. When he sold me the home, he knew that he could have added that into his CRM and said, hey, follow up in 24 months to ask if they'd like some insights about whether that would be a good investment to drop 30K on a new bathroom. That's an easy action to add. It gets it out of your brain. The CRM does what it's supposed to do. But most agents just don't do that because they're like, well, they'll come back to me. No, that's a value thing. It's a different thing when you come to say, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. I just wanted to make sure that you knew if you drop that 30K, you're going to get 45 out on the other side today.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the same thing with like refinancing, which I know the refinance market isn't quite what it was, but when it was booming, what Absolutely. A great opportunity for agents to reach out and say, hey, I don't know, your mortgage situation currently, but I was thinking about you because rates are so low. Obviously they're not as low now, but back then, and I was just wondering if you had a chance to talk to your mortgage person, it might be a good time. Again, what we're talking about is refinance, or sorry, what we're talking about is providing value in between the transactions. And so to think like, what is the home buyer or seller or owner want during that time? It's information that's of use to them. So you are so absolutely right. And it's like, I almost think that people should have a specific marketing track or follow-up track after somebody buys their very first property, first-time home buyers, because
Absolutely.
we know if all of us who own a property remember what it's like when we first bought our very first property, it's kind of like overwhelming to go, well, how often am I supposed to change the filters, or what maintenance should I be doing? And this is where a great agent can come in and say, hey, congrats on your first home. Here's some things to know, month 1, month 2, month 3, and just continuing that. And boy, it's not crowded along that going the extra mile, right? The path is not crowded with other agents doing that. You'd basically be alone. And they're going to be like, wow, my agent is staying in touch with me. I bought the property 4 years ago with them, and I'm still getting good quality content.
Well, now, yeah, I agree with all that. Now, this is what's in somebody's ear that's listening to us right now. They're going, yeah, but that's a lot of work to hope that person comes back to me in 5 years or 8 years when they sell, which is true. But also, if like, my goal is not to make money, my goal is to help people. And so that's why I've been so successful in different industries. When that's your goal, it doesn't take energy to do that. But like on the more shorter term, here's for the agents that are a little more self-serving, that don't want to wait 5 to 8 years to get that lead to come back to them after the transaction. If you want referrals, this is the best path to referrals. I'm going to refer you when you're top of mind. If you're my agent and I love the transaction, I couldn't have imagined a better agent 5 years ago. Somebody asked for a referral. I've never mentioned your name out of the last 6 months. That guy, Bobby, I mentioned, Bobby and my mortgage broker, because my mortgage broker here in Roswell does the same thing. I've probably given them 36 referrals on an annual basis each, because they're doing the follow-ups that I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're so absolutely right. You're basically preaching to the choir here, because this is a huge focus of what I have learned from top real estate professionals. We've interviewed hundreds of them from all over the country over the years, and this idea of being of service, this idea, not just during the transaction, because the transaction is usually a very small percentage of the overall time that you have with the relationship with somebody in your database, right? They need you when they need you, and then there's a lot of time in between. And this idea of, how do I provide value in between, is really the best question you could ever ask yourself for repeat business and referrals, right? I'm sorry, that's my thought. Curious if what your
No, that's definitely my thought. The only thing is, like, when I talk, I'm in a room with hundreds and thousands of agents. I often, they're like, that's so much work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be if you use technology. This is what technology is for. I know so many agents don't like to use CRMs, but it's like, I've led large sales organizations at companies, and it's like, there's a reason. Like, there's only 2 rules I have when I read sales. One is, if you're the top salesperson, I don't care. And if you're number 2 on down to 1,000, if it's not in the CRM, it doesn't exist, because
Right.
that's the path to success. As an individual entrepreneur, that it's your business, you need to treat yourself the same way, because, hey, this will remind you. I mean, my wife and I use Trello to manage our entire household or houses. Like, I have an errands and buy list. So when I go to Home Depot or Lowe's, that's one card. There's a checklist in there about what you need to pick up. I don't even know what's on the list sometimes, because I didn't add it. Well, it's a self-reminding system that I trust. Now, you don't have to use that. You can use a CRM, but when you use technology, then you trust it. Well, then look, I mentioned, hey, follow up with that person about do they want to remodel their bathroom? 2 years down the line, your system will remind you about it. You've taken it out of your mind. It's effortless at that point. It's a 15-second phone call.
Yes, and if it's stuck in your mind, if the to-do is not automated, we use Trello as well for our podcast, so it's just kind of our entire podcast, the entire workflow is on Trello. I use Todoist for my reminders, but I have the same thing. I put every single, and this doesn't make me like a great friend necessarily, but it's something that I'm just saying, not to brag, but just so that anybody can do this. Whatever system you might be using or not using, you should definitely get one. Is you should put all of your clients' birthdays in your CRM. You should put maybe their wedding anniversaries, if you have that sort of relationship with them where you want to contact them. All of this can be automated because it's the same. It's funny. I have this one philosophy when I go to see a doctor, because I know my memory is garbage, and I know that every year I'm supposed to go to the dermatologist and just get checked out head to toe. It seems like the thing I'm supposed to do, or getting your teeth cleaned every 6 months, or whatever the routine is. But I know there's no way I'm going to remember when's the last time I went to see the dermatologist. I'd have to look at my calendar. So before I leave the last my appointment, when I see them, I'm like, I need to make an appointment from a year from now. So basically, but that's like a manual way to do it. What Kurt's really talking about is utilizing technology to remind you, or I could put it into Todoist every year, remind me to get my dermatologist appointment. But the idea is, if I don't have it down, and if I'm not utilizing or leveraging technology, I'm just unlikely to remember to do it, quite honestly.
Well, not just you're unlikely. Our brain is programmed to be lazy. I mean, I'm blessed with being able to sleep very few hours a night. And so I basically can keep 2 full-time jobs my whole life. It drives my wife crazy. Because she's asleep and I've been up for 6 more hours still cranking away at things. But even there, your brain doesn't want to do hard work. I mean, there's some level where it's like, I think we are kind of intended to be a pack mule in some ways, where my job, I'm happier when I'm working on things, but I will forget things. I will procrastinate. I will think things are important when they're not. So one of the reasons I like these systems are not like, they allow me to take 80% of my stuff off my plate and go, this isn't important. Hey, I might have a follow-up with a client, and doesn't mean I have to do it today. It stays on the list. I push it down because there's something else that's more important to do today. But the system will come back and remind me of it. And so, like, I'm going to lie to myself. Your brain's going to lie to yourself too. And
Totally.
Go, hey, you don't need to do this. Your business is going to grow if you don't follow up. And it's like, no. So like, it's a pre-decision, a pre-fight with yourself or whatever. So.
And what's nice is you were saying, and I think you said this, and I just want to step on this point a little bit more, because I really think you're touching on something really important. Is, if you don't have things systematized, everything becomes quite emotional when it occurs to you to do it, like you were saying. And your brain will lie to you and say, this thing just came in to my mind. It's the most important thing in the world because it's got my attention. Is it actually the most important thing, or is it just what you're reacting to in the moment? Well, if you don't have systems in place, there's no real easy way to determine how important and urgent is this particular thing that I'm thinking of doing. If you have systems, the emotional part goes out, and you just sort of go, oh, okay, today I have to call so-and-so and wish him a happy birthday. Yeah. Or I have to call and say, oh, it's been 24 months. I'm going to say, hey, have you thought about, remodeling? I just wanted to touch base. I wanted to make sure I was paying attention to what you guys are up to. Here's an idea for you. But if you had to think to remember to do all of this, you're not going to remember, number one. And number two, it's going to feel like this big emotional thing, whereas you're just following, a series of to-dos that you have set up. And this, it becomes a lot less emotional energy, I think.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And the systems, when you use the reports on them, let you be true to yourself. Because, hey, I actually hate I do work tons of hours. I hate the hustle attitude, because like, I enjoy what I do. So it's not work. I don't want to watch Netflix. I want to come down and write a 7,000 word blog post because I thrive on stuff like that. But like the systems, like even if you come down to your watch, like every system says how much, if you try tracking, how much did I go to the gym? How much did I walk? Right. How much did I swim? You will always drastically underestimate, like 20 to 60%, how much activity you did compared to what you actually did. So the end of the week, this will tell me that I actually walked what I said I was going to walk. Same thing if you're using your CRM. Did I actually make the phone calls? My business growing? I don't care. If it's not growing, the system will let you go back. You can go to Pipedrive, Salesforce, KV Core, and see what have I actually done in here. If I take a phone call that's at random, I can put it in there and then see, oh, well, I thought I was very busy, but apparently I wasn't very productive, because when I look at the KV Core report, I don't actually see that I've done very many follow-ups from it. And so it's both on the day-to-day manager you're talking with. And for me, the huge thing that's been beneficial for me is that kind of weekly review that says, God, the system doesn't say that I've actually done as much as I thought. That's actually reality, not what's in here.
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you about what you call high achieving servant leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about, and I'm going to say it again, high achieving servant leadership? I love that name. I'm curious of what that means to you, and just if you don't mind talking about it.
Yeah, so I've worked for a lot of non-servant leaders before. So servant leadership is, instead of a hierarchical approach about working on a team. I know a lot of your listeners are individual agents, but you may have VAs, you may be trying to build a team. So it's like when you're doing that, it's different between I'm leading from authority where I tell you to do this or you're fired. At some level, that's always that's always what comes out. As opposed to the servant leadership is, look, I'm here to serve the people that are working for me. We have clients we're serving, we have people we're serving. Nobody's ever going to work as hard because this is my business. I own it. I own the brokerage. And so if at that level, like, it's a completely reframed. My job is here to work not because I want money. That's an end result if I've done the right things of serving people. But the high achieving side is, most of the, if you look at the books that people have written, most of them, I don't disagree with this. I'm a strong believer, but most people have written books from a faith perspective. They're doing it because they believe, it's part of Christianity, it's part of Judaism, it's part of Islam about how do you serve others. So they're writing the books from that standpoint. But if I go read Cheryl Bachelor's book, strong Christian believer, she turned around Louisiana's Popeye's kitchen, like, through this attitude. She says, if you want to make a crap ton of money, this is how you do it. And that's like the only real book I've seen. So I try bringing that to people, being like, look, it also sucks to be a hierarchical leader and be a dictator and a micromanager. But if I'm here to serve you, then you're going to show up and do more than I could ever ask because you love the job.
Yeah, and you can apply this to your customers. You can, I mean, because you are well, my friend Joel, who is one of the top mortgage, one of the loan officers in the country, he says givers get.
Yeah.
And his whole philosophy goes, I never think about what I'm going to get. And as a result, he goes, I end up getting more than I could ever imagine, but it all starts with giving. And so this idea, whether you're a boss, a team leader, whether you're just individual practitioner and you want to do this for your clients, being a servant is something. And again, a servant in a way, again, I want to make sure we're not suggesting that you give up your boundaries, your identity, or you become at somebody's beck and call. No, you think about what would provide value for that person, and you just work on it. I mean, this is the reason why influencers have, especially in real estate, a lot of realtors have figured out, boy, if I create YouTube videos that for things in my, geographic area that I service that are maybe not real estate related, maybe they're like, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Wicker Park. What should I know? Right? That might not be a real estate specific question, but that's a pretty important question for somebody that's looking to move to a certain neighborhood, or they want to know, like, what's it like to live there? What are the pros? What are the cons? And I've seen a lot of influencers really dive into this and say, I'm not going to talk too much about real estate. I want people to know that I'm the expert in this particular area. And the way I'm going to do that is by talking about the pros and cons. A lot of people have made careers out of doing this, where this becomes their primary mode of marketing, whereas they really jump into this, how do I provide value to people who are wanting to move or into my local market?
Yeah, it's the difference between networking and net weaving. Networking is, there is usually I'm talking to these people to get something for me and the end result, versus the net weaving is, I'm looking for people in the sphere that I'm working in, seeing how I can help them. And like, or just take something off of their plate, not with any return anticipated to come for it. And you're right, usually givers get as well. I mean, like, hey, I have a property in North Georgia that I need an appraisal on, not a CMA. I need a legal value appraisal from. I have to go do work. I'm going to have to go do work for that to make sure I pick the right company, right person to come and do that. God, somebody that steps up and just says like, hey, I know I'm not getting a transaction out of this, but I have an appraiser that you're going to love. Can I introduce you? It'll be a seamless for you. Like, that's a way that people step in and help, where it's really easy. Like that may be a 12-second phone call. I'll probably make a couple calls after this to ask for some recommendations. Somebody like in my sphere, a few people know that's going on. That's a 12-second call for them to make an introduction. That, of course, like, I'm going to remember that person because they saved me an hour of work.
Yeah, boy, you and I are just so simpatico on this. I'm such a fan of everything you're saying. This idea of being of service and thinking of ways to continue to be of service in between the transactions is really is really the key, right? So if nothing else that people got from this conversation, and I know people got a lot from it, but if nothing else, just constantly wake up every day and say, how can I be of service to people in between transactions? What information are they looking for? How can I make their lives a little easier? And how can I automate that? Like you were saying, how do I use technology so that I'm not having to make 50 phone calls a day, or send out 50 individual emails a day, when I could maybe automate some of that? And Showcase IDX actually does a lot of this as well. So this idea of utilizing technology to really systematize and automate some of your stuff. I mean, we have 750 brokers at our company. We do a lot of constantly trying to say, every day we try to say, what could we send out to our agents today that would help them in their business, right? It's the same kind of conversation. It's not going, hey, where's your next transaction? How come you haven't done a deal in a while? Those kind of micromanaging types of strategies. We're like, well, we want people to just to say, wow, Kale gave me another great idea today about how I could grow my business. Or, if it's a homeowner, wow, my realtor just said, hey, if you're thinking about rehabbing your bathroom, give me a call. I have some thoughts about that. Like, that's huge stuff. So anyway, I think this is a great place to wrap up. I'm just such a huge fan of yours, Kurt. I want everybody who's listening to really, Kurt's a guy you should follow. He's an industry leader. So across multiple industries, he's built many successful companies. He's oftentimes brought in as a consultant to turn companies around and take them to the next level. He's a guy you absolutely should be paying attention to. So please go to his website. And by the way, he's a speaker. If you're, if like, I volunteer with the Chicago Association of Realtors. We're always looking for speakers. If you're part of your local association, Kurt works with associations. He works with everyone. So definitely keep him in mind. He would love to come, to talk to your brokerage, or, talk, of course, with your association. Or if you're looking for some business consulting, if he can't help you, he'll know who can. But definitely reach out to him. Go to his website, which is kurtuhlir.com. Again, that's KURTUHLIR. And by the way, Kurt, I wanted to mention, I'm sorry, .com, kurtuhlir.com. I interrupted myself, but you were mentioning when you used to live in Wicker Park, which is funny because there's a million neighborhoods in Chicago. It's just funny coincidence. I actually currently live about 3.5 blocks due east of you. So I'm at basically Division and Ashland, just a little bit west of that. Yeah. So we were literally, we were, when you lived here, we were just, well, I didn't live there at the time, but just a few blocks from each other. So
it's a great area.
Really lovely and lots of fun. Well, Kurt, thank you so much. I want everyone to go to Kurt's website, kurtuhlir.com, learn about him, follow him. He's got so much great stuff, and he's always popping up in different industry events. And so please check him out. He's amazing. Kurt, thank you on behalf of our audience for being on our show. As well, on behalf of Kurt and myself, we want to thank the audience for sticking around to the end of the show. Hopefully everyone got a tremendous amount of value. I know you did. And show Kurt some love. Visit his website, reach out to him, ask him questions. He's fantastic, and he's a giver. He's here to serve as well. So on behalf of the audience, Kurt, again, thanks. And we'll want to just real quickly before we leave, please, only thing we ask of our listeners is tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that could benefit from this great conversation about systematizing and being of service. This conversation with Kurt, send them a link to our website, which is keepingitrealpod.com. Every episode we've ever done can be streamed there. Or if the person you're referring to is a podcast listener, just have them pull up any podcast app, search for Keeping It Real, and hit that subscribe button. Kurt, thank you so much. And we will see everybody on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.